Yes, good morning and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Monday morning, half past the hour of 9 a.m. We should be doing better to get here on time at 9 a.m. when this broadcast is meant or supposed to start. But yeah, we will do better at that. We will do better at that. Anyways, like I said, it's a pleasure to be here. Plenty of action happened during the course of the weekend. Of course, we discussed some of it last night in last night's broadcast. In the aftermath of that precious 2-1 victory for Manchester United away to Liverpool at Anfield, their first victory since 2016. So in almost a decade. But before we proceed any further, allow me to have our audios tested and make sure everything does check out so that we can get going. To all those that have subscribed to the channel in recent days, thank you so much. We do not take your love and support for granted. We do not take your time for granted. It's a pleasure seeing you, subscribe to the channel, really. Thank you so much. We are only 2 subscribers away from reaching 2,200 subscribers. But like I told you guys recently, now the focus is shifting to watch time. We need to, pursue those 4,000 hours of watch time. That's the objective. We've ticked the boxes in all other aspects. Now the objective or the goal shifts to the 4,000 hours of watch time that we need to make so that we can monetize this channel to help, to help us get better equipment, to help us get better equipment. Their microphones, I was looking at podcast microphones, and when I looked at the reviews, they look to be in affordable range. But when I looked at the reviews, they were not good. And the reviews that were good were on very expensive microphones. The Rode microphones, the Shure, microphones that at the moment we cannot afford. But if we do get the chance to monetize this channel, then those things will become affordable in the long run, of course, with time. So please help me watch all the content. When you find a video, watch it to its full length, even if it's 1 hour, even if it's 30 minutes, even if it's 15 minutes, even if you're watching a short. But most importantly, go to the video section, watch all that content that we did put out there. Go to the live section, watch some of our previous, our content that, our lives. And for those of you that do that, we do not take your love and support for granted. Thank you so much for doing what you do. So, for example, over the last couple of days, of course, over 2 weeks, we've been funneling out content, whether Arsenal can remain at the top of the Premier League. Oliver Glasner's, reported wanting of Manchester United job. The English media narrative around Declan Rice to be Arsenal captain. We had an interview with the one and only Kuku Kasuku Wazabanga. Congratulations, my man Kasuku Kuku Wazabanga, upon winning the Pulse, Influencer Award recently. So congratulations to you, my guy. Then who will be Arsenal's biggest title rivals? We got to discuss that as well in our recent video. That video did publish, I think, on Saturday. Then Angie Postecoglou in the process got sacked, but also FUFA, or the Federation of Ghana Football Associations, did revert back to the old league format, ditching their new league format in the Ghana Premier League. So that content is also there for all of you to go and watch. So please go and watch that content and more on the channel, and continue supporting us in every aspect and respect. So yeah, that's what is happening. That's what is happening. But also, yes, it's all good. It's all good. I wish to send my sincere vote of thanks to every single one of you, the usual suspects the semi regular, suspects, all of you that do watch, our content every single day, day in, day out. People like Pedri, people like LFC that chip in the whatever little time they do have to say hello to us, to follow what we do, to chip in with the debate and expand on some of our conversations. I would not take your love for granted. So thank you so much. Tonight, there will be a game in the Premier League that will be between West Ham and Brentford at 10 p.m. Remember, we are driving towards that time of the season where usually kickoff hours are tend to shift, especially for the day games. So you will experience that in the coming weeks. So be keen on those changes as they do come. This same week, we do have the UEFA Champions League coming our way in the middle of the week. That's on Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll also have games in the UEFA Europa League as well as the UEFA Conference League. Then we'll go into the weekend, and subsequent to that, we'll have the Carabao Cup fourth round fixtures got to be played. But in the meantime, the big question, Glitch, he says, Glitch Bear. Hi, Glitch Bear. Hi, how are you doing? Good morning. Good to have you on the broadcast. I hope you're doing well. Where are you joining us from? My name is Robert Kesakos, and I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda. So thank you for chipping in. I hope you're a football fan, as the channel is a sports channel. It's a football channel. So thank you so much. So Liverpool's change of tactics is causing them problems. Meanwhile, Sean Dyche is also the leading face, or is leading the rest for that first job. Where do we start it all? I think we should start it with Nottingham Forest, because they are racing against time to find their next best manager in line following the sacking over Ange Postecoglou. I've seen all sorts of jokes making the rounds that he was possibly sacked during the course of the game. As soon as Chelsea hit that third goal through Richard James, then it was made official that he was to be sacked. Unfortunately for him, he's only spent 39 days in the job. The silver lining is he gets paid about £7 million in compensation, whatever the modalities are in regards to that contract and its termination clauses. He gets to be paid. I mean, 7 million quid for a job done in 39 days, for a job poorly done in 39 days. I mean, when are you ever going to make that kind of money in that short a period? Unless you're a lucrative businessman, Anyways, the jokes to the side. Ange Postecoglou over the weekend, that was on Saturday, at least it was made public 19 minutes after the full-time whistle that he was out of a job. He was sacked following a poor run of results. He did not win a single game for Nottingham Forest. He managed them across 8 games. He drew 2 against Burnley 1-1, and then he drew in a 2-2 draw against Real Betis in the UEFA Europa League. And then they lost as many as 6 games. They lost to Chelsea by 3-0, lost to Sunderland by 1-0, lost to Newcastle by 2-0, lost to Arsenal by 3-0. They lost to Midtjylland by 3-2, and then that was in the UEFA Europa League, and also they lost to Swansea by 3-2. Reports do suggest across England that apparently Evangelos Marinakis started his search for a managerial replacement for Ange Postecoglou following their 3-2 loss to Midtjylland in the UEFA Europa League. Now, like I said, for me, it was always the wrong decision, in my opinion. Not that it is my place to say, but it is my place to talk about these issues. But I always thought it was the wrong decision, replacing a manager like Nuno Espirito Santo with Ange Postecoglou. Not that Ange Postecoglou is that bad, but Nuno Espirito Santo was that good for Nottingham Forest. He was held in high regard amongst the fans, amongst the players, and some of the minders of the club. Yes, he had a public spat, although it was one-sided, where he did express his disgruntledness to the owner, Evangelos Marinakis, over the growing up between him and his boss, and particularly he literally talked himself out of the job to put it in simple terms. So Evangelos Marinakis thought instead of repairing that relationship between him and his manager, he decided to get rid of him. Well, business people or rich people get to do what they want, but sometimes it's not always right. I mean, for a club that he's invested so much into, he made the wrong decision at the wrong time, sacking Nuno Espirito Santo, who had guided the club back to European football for the first time in 3 decades. That was commendable. Then also, again, coming into the club back in 2024, he had, I think, around maybe towards the tail end of 2023. Anyways, he comes in and saves them from relegation. They finish 17th. Subsequent season, they're pushing for top 4. They end up finishing 7th. Brilliant job done. Of course, by a court ruling or by UEFA decision, they get elevated to the UEFA Europa League, having qualified for the UEFA Conference League because Crystal Palace were relegated to the UEFA Conference League for being found in breach of the multi-club ownership rules because of their then, one of shareholders, John Textor, who also owns Olympic Lyon and things like that. So for me, yes, Nuno Espirito Santo did not get along with Edu Gaspar Dawood, but if you had to choose between the two, it was Nuno Espirito Santo retaining his job and finding a new role or reducing, his Edu Gaspar Dawood's role within Nottingham Forest and things like that. Yes, you have to plan for bigger things as a business owner and put systems in place. I totally understand that. But sometimes, if your CEO is of less value than the managing director, it's not the CEO you retain and get rid of the managing director. You keep the managing director. So in this particular case, the manager, Nuno Espirito Santo, I thought was more important than Edu Gaspar Dawood, and yet Evangelos Marinakis thought otherwise. Anyways, ever since his sacking, speculation has been, of course, put on table in regards to who will be the next Nottingham Forest manager. Conversations have been had on the part of Nottingham Forest with former Manchester City manager Roberto Mancini, but looks like he's not going to be taking that role. It looks like he's going to be turning that down. And now, according to Fabrizio Romano, he did say after talks in the last 24 hours, Roberto Mancini won't become new Nottingham Forest manager at current stage. Despite discussions and negotiations, Forest and Mancini have not reached an agreement. That was according to Fabrizio Romano, very, very reliable source when it comes to transfers and managerial switches and things like that. Now, then, also the other manager that they do appreciate is Fulham's Marco Silva. Although they appreciate him to the best of our understanding or knowledge, they've yet to have any formal talks between Marco Silva and Nottingham Forest. So, but according to David Austin of The Athletic, he did reveal today that Sean Dyche is now leading the race, or the contenders, or the contender is the leading contender to become the new Nottingham Forest boss. Edu, hi LFC, how are you? How is your morning? Good to have you back on the channel. He did say that Edu and Srinos driving the Nottingham Forest process. The 54-year-old deemed strong fit for the squad. Club situation, Mancini looking unlikely. Silva set to stay at Fulham as we speak. Again, what those two were just speaking about. Now, I did say, I think it was yesterday, was it yesterday or the other day on Saturday? I did say that if I were Nottingham Forest, I'm choosing Sean Dyche on any day, whether you want him as an interim, whether you want him as a permanent guy, I'm going for Sean Dyche. And my reasons were simple, and I will repeat those reasons. First of all, not too far back, a couple of weeks ago, he was speaking about Manchester United and the situation they are in. They were in with Ruben Amorim. Forget the recent run of results that they've managed to post on board, including winning 3 games out of the last 4, which is quite impressive by Manchester United standards. Including winning what? Beating up against Chelsea 2-1, beating up against Liverpool yesterday by 2-1, beating up against Sunderland by 2-0, and in between there, of course, losing to Brentford by 3-1. So he did say that with that kind of squad, he would do better. He would bring better results. I mean, you're supposed to blow your own trumpet, but I would also certainly believe so, that he could do better with that squad than Ruben Amorim was doing at the time. So the reason for me as to why I would go with Sean Dyche, one, to be on the safer bet, give him an interim contract until the end of the season. That is what usually the season is 8 9 months. We've so far worked about 2 months, So give him that contract until the end of the season. If he does prove himself worthy, then give him a 2-year contract and take it from there, or a 3-year contract, whichever way you see it fit. But first of all, he's one of the managers that is going to give Nottingham Forest a quick reset if you were to be given the job. A quick reset in reverting back into the basics of Nuno Espirito Santo. The two managers are almost similar in more ways than not. He's a defensive guy. He's a conservative kind of manager, so he would look to improve on their defensive structure. He will work on that without a doubt. First of all, they already had that defensive structure, playing with a bit of a low block, mid block, depending on the opponent, and catching teams on the counter. Typical Sean Dyche. Typical Sean Dyche. He loves those long balls, as did Nuno Espirito Santo, playing those long balls, trying to find Morgan Gibbs White, trying to find Callum Hudson-Odoi or Anthony Elanga with all their pace, trying to find Chris Wood. So Sean Dyche is the guy for me. Then also, he's well accustomed to the English football. Not to say that all the other contenders are not, because, Marco Silva at Fulham is well accustomed to it, as is Roberto Mancini, having guided Manchester City to a league title. That was back in 2012? Yes. So in 2012, when they won it on the final day, you remember that Sergio Kun Aguero goal against QPR that won it all. So he was the man in charge at the time of Manchester City. So he does have that Premier League experience. However, a decade later, literally a decade later, ever since he was last in the Premier League, a lot of things have changed. Not in how the ball is kicked, but in terms of how teams apply themselves. Whether he can contend with that, but we know he's a winning manager. He did guide Italy to the triumph of the Euro 2020 that was played in 2021. Remember Italy beating up against England in the finals, so on penalties. So he's a winning manager. He has that mentality. He has that knack for winning. So they will be getting pure gold if they were to hire Roberto Mancini. But for me, the guy to go with is Sean Dyche. He's a bit of a likable figure, how he relates with the media and things like that. But I think he would help them get back to the basics, right? Because the season has already kick-started. We're 2 months into the season already. You look at that situation and say, we have 6 games in the UEFA Europa League that we need to win to try and qualify for the next round, the next stage of the competition. We have a reputation to revamp in our Premier League. I think he can help you do that. I remember in one of his best performing seasons, he helped Burnley go to the UEFA Europa League. And while they did not do any wonders, not that they were expected to, but he did well. I think he did well. Then he walked into Everton when they needed to be saved from relegation. He saved them from that. Of course, overall, with the aspiration of Everton and their shortages in finances, in the long run, it did not really work out for him. But eventually, I think you ought to credit him for the kind of work that he did with Everton. I thought it was good. First of all, he did save them from relegation in his first half season. Things were not really going their way. Things were not really going their way. He is and by the way, he's played for Nottingham Forest as a player before. That was between for about a year, around 1989 to 1990. Oh no, he was a Nottingham Forest player, but he did not make any appearances for them. But yes, before moving to Chesterfield, where he made majority of his appearances, 231 and scored 8 goals. Then Bristol City, had this long stint with Luton Town, played for Millwall, played for Watford, and he played for Northampton until between 2005 and 2007 before retiring. Then his managerial career, for about a year, he was with Watford. He managed Watford, and then between 2012 and 2022, which was almost a decade. He was in charge of Burnley. He did help Burnley qualify for European football, like I've told you, at some point in those seasons. I also remember at one point he was discussing former Burnley manager, Vincent Company, and he said he literally spent a good chunk of fortune and still got the team relegated. And then after getting the team relegated, he got the Bayern Munich job. And he said he wished something like that could happen to him. He wished that he could have a season where he gets to spend £100 million on players and things like that. So, you know, things got sort of sideways for him during the COVID-19 season and the post-COVID, time that things ended. He ended up being sacked at Burnley. Then in 2023, he took over at Everton, where he managed them for almost 2 years, because he comes in midway 2023, and then it was on 30th January 2023 that he got appointed to the managerial role for Everton. And in his first game, Everton defeated then league leaders Arsenal by 0-0. So our results under Dyche were generally mixed, so you would expect that. But then he completed that season, managed them through the 2023-2024 campaign, and then started the 2024-2025 campaign, which he did not see through because eventually he was sacked, and David Moyes came into the role. So that was on 9th January 2025. He was dismissed, and David Moyes returned. So he's that sort of, I don't want to call him a radical guy, but he's the kind of manager who is he sort of builds his team. They play with a lot of energy. They play combative football, a bit of riff-raff kind of football. He likes very, very tall and big players. Those are the ones he likes to play with. The likes of Chris Wood, who he managed at Burnley, so he's a player he knows one too well. Timothy Awoni, those would be his kinds of players. Morillo in that defense, and Milenkovic. So, for me, I think he would do well with Nottingham Forest. Not to say he would win them titles or silverware, but at least so far this season, he would salvage their reputation. That would be my feeling around him in regards to where he would see Nottingham Forest go following another weekend of disappointment for the club. Anyways, let's leave Sean Dyche and Nottingham Forest at that, and now move to Liverpool, because Liverpool's change of tactics is causing them problems. The reason as to why I say there's change of tactics, there's also change of human resource in different positions that is causing them problems. Of course, last season they did play with Alexander Trent-Arnold. They did play with Andy Robertson. These were all very, very pivotal to their build-up, to the way they applied themselves, both going forward and defensively. But of course, more because of Alexander Trent-Arnold, who was an inverting sort of fullback, but also going down that channel, the chemistry he had with Mo Salah, the long passes in terms of switching play, inverting in midfield and helping in there. I mean, it was just everything clicked well, or everything was okay. Then Andy Robertson on the other side, we know how good he is a left back. For the last 4-5 campaigns, he's been one of the standout players, season in, season out for Liverpool. And yet now we do have Milos Kakis and Jeremy Frimpong or Conor Bradley starting in the left back and right back roles respectively. The absence of Alisson Ramsey-Becker in itself does not help much because of that hamstring injury that he did suffer. And he's said to be out at least until the November international break, unless otherwise. But that in itself does not help. That in itself does not help. But here's what I want to say. Now, when you look at the midfield, they've changed the way they applied themselves. Last season, they had that. They had the counter press of Luis Diaz, Cody Gakpo, and Mo Salah. Now they are having to deal with outright strikers. Either it's Hugo Ekitike or Alexander Isak. It was Alexander Isak who started over the weekend. And they have a four-man counter press that goes with Mo Salah, goes with Alexander Isak, goes with Cody Gakpo, and the number 10 in Dominic Soboslai. Now, that creates a bit of vulnerability for their double pivot in Alexis McAllister and Ryan Gravenberch, because Connor Bradley or Milos Kakis or Jeremy Frimpong do not invest in midfield to help. That once they have the counter press of the first four beaten, that these three should help. So it's only two players that are left in that role, which leaves them vulnerable, creating lots of spaces behind them. And we know that their defense or their defenders have been struggling in recent times in terms of how things have happened. So, and then you remember Mo Salah, the way he helps in the counter press. I do not want to say is not that effective, but it's intended for him not to do a lot of work with the counter press because he needs to reserve his energy. We know he's aging. Anna Slot looked to deploy him the way sort of Cristiano Ronaldo does about his modern game, of course, knowing that he's lost all that electric pace, that energy of running back and forth, running from far deep. He sort of stays on the fringes of the upfront, waiting for that ball to be played to him, and then you run into those spaces. And like I said, when things are not going your way, everything you touch does not turn into goal. Everything you touch seems to be like another stick of misfortune, real stick of misfortune that you've been handed. Because yesterday, Mo Salah should have scored. There's a moment he had at close range and he plays that ball wide of the mark. And on another day, Mo Salah should be hitting the target. Mo Salah from last season should be hitting the target. And yet that's not the case. That's not the scenario that is happening as things do stand. So that change in change in personality, that change in the individuals are playing or being deployed in certain areas, the change in tactics, because last season mid three that's Soboslai, McAllister, and Gravenberch were all helping with the counter press. And like I've said here before, I'm not too worried about Liverpool that they will bounce back. However, recent data or statistics do not support their efforts at the moment. So they've lost 4 games on the spin, 3 games in the Premier League, and another in the UEFA Champions League, in which they lost by a goal to nil against Galatasaray. Might I mention that last season, throughout 38 Premier League games, they lost only 4 games, and we are barely halfway the season, and they've already lost 3. Now, for a team that wants to defend their crown, for a team that wants to win at the Premier League title, that sounds like a big ask. I do not know. I do not think there's any team other than Manchester City that have won the Premier League title back to back until you have to go back between the period between 2007 and 2009 when Manchester United won 3 consecutive titles. The only team that has won consecutive Premier League titles ever since then has been Manchester City. Has been Manchester City. They won it in 2018 and they also won it in 2019. And then they lost it to Liverpool, conceded it to Liverpool in 2020, and then won it 4 consecutive times. But there's no team that has defended that Premier League title back to back ever since only Manchester City, ever since Man United. So you can see how difficult it is. And the early signs are, because, for example, while it is possible, it's hard, given in the manner in which they are playing, to think that Liverpool are going to go throughout the rest of the 30 games unbeaten. Like I said, it's possible, they're capable of doing it, but given the way they are looking at the moment, it doesn't look to be really, really plausible. Yesterday, for me, again, they were the better team on the pitch, but the results proved otherwise. I saw Anna Slot criticizing Manchester United that they went there and played that. They played with a low block, they played long balls, and when you go a goal down against a team that is playing in that manner, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you. Indeed, it's true. It's going to be very, very difficult for you. But Arne Slot, and with all his experience, given that this is his second season in the Premier League, having won a title in the first season, I do not think teams that play with a low block should be of any surprise to him. In any case, when you're playing a team like Liverpool, especially away to Anfield, where you know they are outright favorites, where you know that they have these top-class electric forwards in Cody Gakpo, Mo Salah, Alexander Isak, you're going to play with the low block, you're going to play with the mid block to try and limit the damage. Otherwise, if you give them a free range, when you go for a counter press and it fails, then they're going to score many, many goals against you. Cody Gakpo should have scored a hat-trick or more, but he was just not lucky. He scored in the 78th minute a goal that had cancelled out Brian Mbomo's second-minute goal, but it turned out to be a mere consolation as Harry Maguire scored in the 84th minute to win all the 3 points for Man United. But twice he hit the upright in the first half and in the second half with spectacular, attempts on goal. Then there's a header that around the 84th minute or 86th, thereabout, after Manchester United. No, actually before, I think around the 80th minute, before Man United go forward. Anywhere between that period of time, when Jeremy Frimpong crosses in the ball and with the goal at his mercy, he hits that ball wide of the mark. And I say to myself, that was a golden opportunity for Liverpool to win it, because if Liverpool had taken the lead after, restoring parity at 1-1, then things would have been totally different. Now, former Liverpool defender Jeremy Carragher has come out to pick on Mo Salah to say, of course, his views about the team are much bigger than Mo Salah, but he does say that Mo Salah shouldn't be starting the next 2 games. Again, he did not start against Galatasaray; they still lost anyway. For me, when it comes to teams losing, isolating a single player, whereas they may not be delivering within that sort of space of moments, is always looking at problems from the surface. Because yes, you can withdraw Mohamed Salah and play Federico Chiesa down that side, or Riongo Moha, or whichever player you may want to play there. But for as long as the tactics are still the same, that player is bound to face similar problems. Now, perhaps the only difference is that if you play Riongo Moha or Federico Chiesa, you may ask them to do more defensively than you ask of Mo Salah, given his kind of age, and things like that. So, but again, it's a principle, or it's something that they can try out. But their next fixture is against Eintracht Frankfurt in the UEFA Champions League before returning to the Premier League to play away at the Dyche Stadium against Brentford on Saturday. And according, like I said, to Jeremy Carragher, he thinks that Mo Salah shouldn't be starting those 2 games. Let's see a change of guard in that role. Yesterday, we saw a moment when Hugo Ekitike was brought on before Alexander Isak being withdrawn. He was playing down the left wing. He was coming in from the left wing to, invert into the middle of the park to strike that ball. And he had I think, about 2 shots on target, of course. Sorry, not on target, but 2 shots at goal, all that went wide of the mark. Hugo Ekitike, he looked sharp. And today there's been a question that has been posed in different forums, that between Alexander Isak and Hugo Ekitike, who should start. So for me, given the kind of momentum that he had started with, I would have started with Hugo Ekitike as I ease Alexander Isak into full fitness. Yes, I know he is cost an arm and a leg to the club, and one would argue that based on that principle, he should be starting, given that he scored 23 goals last campaign and provided 6 assists while at Newcastle, that he should be starting. All that argument is right, but like I said, Hugo Ekitike got himself sent off in that 2-1 victory against Southampton in a game which he scored in the 3rd round of the EFL Cup. So by the virtue of that red card, he was bound to miss the start of the next game. But that notwithstanding, so for me, given how well he had adapted himself to the Premier League, I'd give him a nod to start. As you ease Alexander Isak into these things, as you look to give him more minutes. So maybe for every 65 minutes, or even up to 70 minutes, give Hugo Ekitike a run, give him that 1 hour, and then bring on Alexander Isak. So that's how I believe that Liverpool should be deploying themselves, in that sort of regard, in that sort of sense. So, but it's all for the manager to do. If he doesn't believe so, let that be the case. So, anyways, then quickly, Anna Slot. Is Anna Slot to blame? Of course, every time a team is not playing well, a team like Liverpool, then obviously all the blame is going to be heaped on the manager, because he does pick and choose, how they go about a game. For those of you that are just joining the broadcast, please consider liking the broadcast, but also subscribing to the channel if you're new here. My name is Robert, and I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda. So Mo Salah has gone 7 consecutive Premier League appearances without scoring a non-penalty goal for the very first time in his Liverpool career. You remember he did not score against Newcastle in their 3-2 victory against Newcastle. He did not score in the 1-0 victory against Arsenal. He scored a penalty against Burnley. That was in stoppage time. I think 50th minute of us at a time. He didn't. Now, that was a penalty. So we're talking about non-penalty goals. He did not score against Everton, because it was Ekitike and and Ryan Gravenberch that scored in that game. He did not score against Crystal Palace. He did not score against Chelsea. He did not score against Manchester United. And yet Manchester United is one of those teams that you would literally bank your arm on that he would score against, because he scored lots of goals against them. I think as many as 16 goals during his time at Liverpool across all competitions for Mohamed Salah. And yet things are not really happening for him at the moment. Things are not happening for him at the moment as he would have hoped. Would I be worried about Mohamed Salah? Certainly not, because I think he's done enough, or too well enough. He's proven himself over time at Liverpool that he does not need to be questioned. All good players have their bad spells. I think the manager is trying to stick with his star player to say, I have your back. I know things will happen for you at the right time. Just keep putting in the effort. Just keep putting in the effort. While now, on the other side, the media is starting to hammer it down that perhaps he should have a change of playing staff, with Mo Salah being one of those that get sacrificed for a starting slot in that Anna Slot starting 11. But let's wait and see. But losing 4 games on the spin is not looking good, is not very encouraging, especially given what they spent during the course of the summer. Like I said, 79 million pounds on Ekitike, 125 on Alexander Isak, 100 million pounds on Florian Wirtz, who started off the bench in the last couple of games. Of course, 35 million euros on Jeremy Frimpong, about 30 on Georgi Mamadashvili, about 40 on Milos Kakis, and things like that. And yet results have not been on their way. Again, for those of you that have been part of this channel long enough, you know that when we are discussing about Liverpool during the course of the summer, in the build-up to this particular season, our reservations came around the midfield and their defensive block. I did say that while Ryan Gravenberch was immaculate last season, we've seen that this season he's yet to regain that form. McAllister, Dominic Szoboszlai, while you could pick that Dominic Szoboszlai as a versatile player, getting played in a 10, in an 8, at right back, has been one of their best performers so far this season. You can also acknowledge that he has not yet hit the standards of last season. So I had worries about their defense. And if you look at the number of goals or the amount of goals they've conceded so far this season, I think it's safe to say, or you also come to the same conclusion that I was right to be worried about them. So, for example, Liverpool have so far scored 14 goals this season and have conceded 11. They have a goal difference of 3. Compare that to, for example, the Manchester City. They've scored 17 goals. They are the highest goal scoring side in the Premier League, with Chelsea second to them, who have scored 16, and they've only conceded 6. That gives a positive 11 goal difference. You look at a team like Arsenal. they've scored 15. I think that's the third best, they're the third best goal scoring side in the league, but they have only conceded 3. So they do not concede so many goals. When you look at teams, I think you have to look at teams like Sunderland, teams like Manchester City, and who have conceded the second least number of goals with 6. But for Liverpool, you have to be worried about how they defend. They are not doing it so well. And for as long as they keep conceding and they're not scoring many the other side, it's going to be a miserable run of a season. I keep saying that in their 3-2 victory against Atletico de Madrid, 3-2 victory against Newcastle, 4-2 victory against Bournemouth, those showed us that those defensive problems were there, for us to see. They were there for us to see. Some people may have chosen to ignore those signs. Because Liverpool were winning. But for me, it remained a big concern that if they continue conceding these kinds of goals, this number of goals, then it is going to come back to bite them in a certain set of games that they will concede and not find a way back. They've relied so much on scoring late goals. And I did say, what if you come in a game and it does not happen for you, that you do not get the late goal? What will happen? You'll end up, losing or dropping those points. So that's the situation of Liverpool. How do they pick themselves back? I think maybe I want to agree that maybe for me, one, I would retain the back 4. Of course, in the absence of Alson Ramsey-Beckham, Georgie Mamadashvili has to play. Ibrahim Konate, Virgil van Dijk, Milos Kakes, and Jeremy Frimpong, or at least Andy Robertson. Then that midfield trio of McAllister, Gravenberch, and Szoboszlai, I wouldn't change it for now. Why? They are so accustomed to playing with each other. Now, striker, I'm going with Ekitike to start because, again, he has the pace, he's fully fit, he will try things, he's not bullied by defenders or anything like that. Cody Gakpo, every now and then he's popping up with the goal. And so I think I would still give him the nod at the expense of Alexander Isak. Mo Salah, does he deserve to be rested? I mean, that's a bit of a hard one. You want your best player to be on the pitch at all the time, because anytime he's capable of creating for you that magic. Yes, for the moment it's not happening for him, but I wouldn't swap him out. However, what I would do, that every time if it's not working out in a game, I wouldn't hesitate to withdraw him and make my substitutions early. If I'm to bring on Ngomoho, if I'm to bring on Chiesa. So that's what I would do. In as far as setting up this Liverpool side is concerned. But yeah, anyways, let's also look on to some of the other results that did happen over the course of the weekend. Just a second. So over the weekend also, where do we start? Okay, let's start with Saturday, of course. Beautiful results there for Man City, beating up against Everton by 3-0. A beautiful result, Chelsea beating up against Nottingham Forest by 3-0. Beautiful result for Sunderland, beating up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 3-0. Beautiful result by Crystal Palace, coming from 2 goals down to ensure that they pick the point against Bournemouth. Beautiful result for Burnley, beating up against Leeds by 2-0. Beautiful result for Brighton by beating up against Newcastle by 2-1. But also a very beautiful result for Arsenal, beating Fulham by 1-0, a game that they lost last season. When you look at this Arsenal side in comparison, again, because we shed more light on them, because they are the leaders, they are the current leaders at the summit of the Premier League table. And now I was saying, when you look at some of their results this season in comparison to the same run of games last season, you will see that they've had an improvement, giving them 7 more points than they had amassed in some of these fixtures last season. For games like Manchester United away from home, last season they drew. I think it was a 1-1 draw with Bruno Fernandes scoring a spectacular free kick in that one, and Declan Rice scoring to the equalizer. So they dropped 2 points. This time around, they gained 2 points because they won by goal to nil away to Old Trafford. Game against Leeds United, of course, Leeds were not in the league last season. So for teams that were not in the league last season, replace them with the opponents that were in the league last season. The teams that got relegated, the Leicester Cities of this world, the Southamptons of this world, that got relegated last season. So they won that one. Then Liverpool away, they drew last season. This time around, they lost, so they dropped a point, an extra point. Last season, they dropped 2 points. This time around, they dropped 3 points. Then against Nottingham Forest, that was a win. Against Manchester City at home, it was a 5-1 victory last season. This time around, they drew. Again, they dropped 2 points there. Away to Newcastle last season, they lost by a goal to nil. Alexander Isak's goal. This time around, they went out there and grinded it out to a 2-1 victory. So they gained all 3 points. Played West Ham at home. They lost by a goal to nil last season. Around February, you remember that goal scored by Gerard Boyle. This time around, they managed to beat West Ham by 2 goals to nil. So 3 points gained. Away to Fulham, last season they drew. This time around, they won. So they have cumulatively amassed 7 points more than they did last season in the first 8 fixtures against those kinds of opponents, against some of those opponents. So we can only wait and see what there is in store for Arsenal before the international break, because they're going to be up against Crystal Palace next weekend. Very, very difficult game, very difficult opponent. Crystal Palace is one of those teams that gave them headache last season, including a 2-2 draw at home. Jean-Philippe Mateta scoring in that one, catching David Raya way miles off his line before looking the ball above him. When William Saliba, I think, conceded possession in a very, very dangerous area. Adam Wharton had a very brilliant game in that one. I think Ebeleche Eze was one of the other goal scorers for that, Crystal Palace side. This time around, Ebeleche Eze is playing his trade for the Arsenal. He did not have a wonderful game over the weekend against Fulham, but you'll be happy that they won at the end of the day, because Arsenal's next 2 fixtures are against Crystal Palace, Burnley, and Sunderland. So away, Sunderland and Burnley, those will be away games. And then after the international break, they will return to 3 consecutive London derbies, including the North London derby against Tottenham Hotspur coming fast. They'll play away to Chelsea. They'll play against Brentford. But for me, the next 3 games prior to the international break should be inexcusably winnable fixtures for Arsenal. Like I said, very strong opponents in Sunderland, Palace, Burnley. But I mean, if you want to win the league, it's inexcusable that you drop points against any of those sides, even though 2 of those games are away from home. Find a way to beat Crystal Palace. I know Crystal Palace are giving a lot of hard time to many, many big teams, but Everton showed you that they are a beatable side. Bournemouth showed you that you can't score 3 per step. Go and beat up against Crystal Palace. So yeah, they needed a set piece goal, of course, from Leandro Trossard to win all 3 points against Fulham. It's that kind of game where they played well but did not capitalize on their chances. They weren't clinical. Bernard Leno did well enough to make some brilliant saves in the course of that game. But again, you won't always play well, but you have to find a way to win if you are going to win the league title. So that's how I see it, or that's how I saw it. Anyways, tonight, West Ham are in action against Brentford. I've said before, West Ham have had a poor start to the season, one of the poorest, in fact. Their last cohort of games, about 5 games, they've lost to Arsenal by 2 goals to nil. They did share the spoils with Everton in a 1-1 draw, lost to Crystal Palace by 2 goals to 1, lost to Tottenham Hotspur by 3 goals to nil, and then they beat up against Nottingham Forest by 3 goals to nil. So they have only 1 victory and 1 draw in their last 5 and have 3 losses. Nuno Espirito Santo is trying to get things right, and he's still searching, I think, for his first victory as a West Ham manager. So will it come against Brentford tonight? I mean, which other opponent would you rather it come from if it wasn't for Brentford? You have done justice. You have done justice here. the Man United game. Thank you so much, my brother Paul Chigozi, there for tuning into the broadcast. I believe this Monday morning you're a very, very happy man, knowing that you beat up against your biggest rival for the first time since 2016 at Anfield. But it's always a delightful day when Man United win against Liverpool, whether it's at home, whether it's away from home, whether it's at a neutral ground. Any day for a win for Manchester United against Liverpool, given the historical rivalry that exists between the two, arguably the biggest game of the Premier League. I mean, it's got to be commended. It's got to be exciting. Anyways, back to the West Ham and Brentford game. Brentford on the other side, again, they've struggled as pretty much the way we had expected they would struggle. First of all, you have a swap of manager with, Thomas Frank heading to North London at Tottenham Hotspurs, who, by the way, lost in the course of the weekend by 2-1 against Aston Villa. You then have you bring in Keith Andrews, who is a rookie. It's his first managerial job. He was only a set piece coach who had just arrived at Brentford a couple of months back. Then, Thomas Frank walked away with every assistant and everything supportive in his work at, Brentford. Literally only left saucepans behind. And perhaps maybe he went away possibly with the Kidsman. But anyways, jokes aside, Brentford have expectedly struggled. Yes, they've won some games, including beating up against Manchester United by 3-1, but they've lost many games. Their last result was a 1-0 loss to Manchester City, but Erling Haaland scoring in that one to win all the 3 points for Manchester City. You wind things further back after their victory to Manchester United. They had lost 3-1 to Fulham. In between there, they had a draw to Chelsea. It was a 2-2 draw. Then a 2-1 loss to Sunderland. Now, when you look at Brentford, they've sort of done fairly well against the big sides, because if you have a 2-2 draw against Chelsea, then you beat up against Manchester United and Manchester City practically struggle at beating you, then there's something commendable. There's some positivity to look at in the way you apply yourself. But like I say, at the end of the day, it's not how they play that will matter. It's the results that will matter. Personally, I did predict that by the tail end of the season, Brentford is going to be one of those teams that will be relegated. My prediction was for them to finish 18th on the Premier League law, and they are not far from that because they are only 2 points above the 18th place, 2 places above that place, and 2 points above that place. So they are literally flirting with relegation, than safety. So fortunes could change. In a way, you have give credit to Keith Andrews as a rookie manager, but it's going to be a bit of a difficult game for them away to West Ham. Now, West Ham being 19th on the league log, they have not done themselves any wonders. So Nuno Espirito Santo has had to have a baptism of fire. The likes of Konstantinos Mavropanos, one of the center backs that they do have in their ranks, is the kind of they're the kinds of players that he will have to be really, really hard if they are going to improve defensively. Of course, Aaron Wan-Bissaka has been one of their better players in as far as not just this season, but in as far as recent times are concerned. Ever since he joined them from Manchester United, he's been one of the standout performers for this West Ham side. But if they to do anything right, you need Thomas Tuchel to have a good day in office. You need Gerard Bowen to have a good day in office. You need Alfonso Areola in goal to have a good day in office. You need Lucas Paqueta to have a good day in office. Then Magasa in that central midfield needs to have a good day in office. Somerville and Nicholas Fulcru, I do not know whether he will start this game or it will be Callum Wilson that will start as their target man. We will wait to see what the case will be. But also Malik Diouf and Kilman will have to be defensively astute against Thiago, and Igor Thiago, who scored a brace against Manchester United, and Kevin Shedd. Very, very brilliant attacking, duo in that sense. And then Jordan Henderson in that pivot of a midfield will have to be really, really good for Brentford if they are to get a result at the London Stadium. Then Mikel Damsgaard also needs to have a good game. Of course, for Brentford, they play with the back five. It's a 5-3-2 kind of system that they do deploy so that they are defensively solid. And that's why they give Manchester City lots and lots of troubles, or they limited their goal threat, in terms of, attacking them. So my prediction, as much as my gut feeling is giving me draw vibes, I don't know. I want to bet on Nuno Espirito Santo and give him a 2-1 win, a 2-1 win. Over the course of the weekend, we got some predictions right. Not in terms of the score lines, but at least in terms of the victories. For example, we got the one of Tottenham wrong. I think I'd given Tottenham a 2-1 victory. I'd given Arsenal a 3-0 victory. It was only 1-0. I gave Sunderland a win. I think it was 2-1 to win against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Yes, they won, but it wasn't 2-1. I gave Manchester City to beat up against Everton. Crystal Palace and Bournemouth, I think I'd given it a draw. I think. Then Burnley, I'd given them the upper hand against Leeds. Brighton and against Newcastle, I think, was it a 2-2 draw? And then a Chelsea victory against Nottingham Forest. So at least this weekend wasn't as gloomy as some of the previous weekends that we've had. So I'm going to go with a 2-1 victory for West Ham United, but I do not rule out a draw at any given one point. Anyways, away from that, in the Spanish La Liga, things got underway, and Real Madrid got a narrow victory against Getafe. Getafe, very, very defensively solid. In fact, Getafe received 2 red cards in that game, and still Real Madrid couldn't score just more than one, because Nyom was one of those sent off in the 77th minute, and 3 minutes later, Kylian Mbappe scored, with Adagula providing a sumptuous assist for him. And then Sanchez was the other player that was sent off in that game, as Real Madrid returned to the summit of the La Liga standings with 8 victories. Is it? Yes, I think 8 victories out of the opening 9 games. 8 wins and 1 loss. That loss came against Atletico de Madrid in a 5-2 derby. So they have 24 points. Barcelona, second place, 7 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss in their opening 9 fixtures. Villarreal, who did share the spoils in a 2-2 draw against Real Betis over the course of the weekend. Remain third with Atletico de Madrid, who won by 0-0 over the weekend, coming in 4th. Atletico de Madrid have had a bit of a mixed start to this campaign: 4 wins, 4 draws, and 1 loss. Their next fixture is on Tuesday away to the Emirates Stadium in the UEFA Champions League. Gonna be a bit of a difficult game there for Arsenal. They will give Arsenal one for their money. Antoine Griezmann, Julian Alvarez, Simeone, then what's the name of that guy that scored a brace against Liverpool? It does elude me, but yeah, we'll get to to review those games tonight in the late night broadcast at 11 p.m. East African time, and then of course tomorrow morning we'll have to have our own insights in those games on how they could set up, on whether there's cause for concern or cause for worry. For a team that just beat up against Real Madrid not so far back, you have to be worried, because they showed they are capable of scoring loads and loads of goals in as far as things go at the moment. So yeah, I mean, guys, why don't you allow me wrap it here? Thank you so much for those that have been part of today's podcast. Thank you so much, LFC. Thank you so much, Paul Chigozi. Thank you so much, Glitche Bear. Thank you so much to all our usual suspects, the semi-regular suspects, and every single one of you that supports this channel. Like I told you guys, the next objective is to try and monetize the channel, is by hitting 4,000 hours of watch time. We are driving towards that goal. So whatever you do to support that drive will be really, really, really commendable and impressive. So thank you so much. Thank you. For those that have recently joined the community, new subscribers, welcome to the channel. Let's keep growing. Thank you so much for your love and support. Allow me to wrap it here. I wish you a blessed Monday, and I'll see you guys next time. It's 10:30 a.m. Let me leave you, go to your other, work and routines, and I also get going to other duties. It's been a pleasure doing this with you. Bye-bye for now.